Alright, so we're getting started on the Sonoma today. We're going to work on getting this head gasket off. I already started, but all I did was pull the AC unit back out of the way and pull the coolant line off. And the air box and stuff is out of the way, just so we can get a look at what we're doing here. A couple of things I noticed right off the bat. This bracket all has to come out of the way, which is kind of a pain in the butt. This coolant jacket here where the thermostat and stuff is will not come off without taking the 4 bolts out of this pulley and pulling it out of the way. I'm hoping that this is enough to get the rest of the bolts out of this bracket to get this bracket out of the way. Unfortunately, the alternator is on it, and so is the power steering pump. I'm not going to unhook the power steering pump. I'm kind of hoping I don't have to unhook that either. I'm hoping I can undo these bolts and kind of just pull this forward out of the way enough to get the head off. Most of the videos I watched, they left the header on the head and unbolted it down at the flange. Now, the thing with this truck is, I was told it had a bad head gasket, but I was also told that they did the head gasket 20,000 miles ago. So, I'm not sure what we're going to find. Maybe they used a cheap gasket, maybe they didn't buy new head bolts. Who knows? It could be a number of things, but I'm kind of hoping it's not a cracked head. 20,000 miles is kind of a long time to drive it before it would start showing. So I'm kind of thinking that it's probably just a cheap gasket or they didn't replace the head bolts. We won't be able to tell really, so. But I might have to take the head and get it checked. It doesn't look like they took the header off. This is all pretty rusty still. So far the bolts have been coming out easy, so I would say that they definitely were in it. I can't really tell looking down in there whether or not they took it off at that flange, but that's where we're going to try to take it off. Yeah, there's a lot to this. I'm probably going to have to try to get this stuff out of the way too. At least the throttle body's probably going to have to come off. Definitely going to have to come off. But if I run into anything crazy, I will chime in and let you guys know what I found that needed to be moved to get done what we got to get done here. Anyways, catch you in a bit. Alright, it didn't take long for me to find a little something to show you guys. This bracket right here, which you can see is loose right now, is goes to the back of the power steering pump. There's 2 bolts here up on top that you can see that are obvious. There's one down underneath here that goes in this way into the bracket, and there's 2 on the back of the pump down behind here. With an extension and a 13mm, you can get in here and get both of these back ones out. These top ones are 14 and the front ones are 14, and then you can take it out of there just like that. But I mean, that thing's massive. You can see there the 2 bolt holes for the 13 mils and the 14 down on the bottom and the 2 14s on top. So in the pile of parts we go. And then we get a pretty good look at the header here going down in there. It's actually a pretty nice cast header. But yeah, they definitely didn't take it off here. They took it off down there and pulled the whole head out when they did it. So as we continue. Alright, sorry to keep cutting in and out like this. I'm going to try to walk you guys through this as best I can. So the bracket that has the alternator and the power steering pump on it. There's 4 bolts in the front of the head. There's one down there, one here. Obviously you can see those 2 there. 13mm. You can get to them if you pop that pulley off with the ratchet. You're going to have to clean this gasket and stuff off, but you can do that after you get the head out. So that's out of the way. Now, there's some more stuff on the back side here. It looks like I'm definitely going to have to take the intake off, which looks like it's probably going to be a little bit of fun. Intake's got to come off, and then the flange gasket, or the flange for the header, and then there's some brackets and stuff in the back there that got to come off before this head can come out. A lot of wiring and stuff in the way. So, alright, on to the next step. Alright, I didn't turn the radio down this time, but If you look down in there, you can see this little bracket right here. The top bolt of this bracket is hooked to a stud on the bottom of the intake, and the other bolt's on a stud on the bottom of the down on the block here. This hole that you can see near my finger is supposed to be bolted to the back of the alternator, but at least I think that's what. Yeah, there's a hole there on the back of the alternator. The bolt wasn't in it, so just another thought when it comes to taking this bracket off. You're going to have to undo that bolt on the back of the alternator, but the person who was in here before me never put the bolt back in. You'll find a lot of that stuff when you're working on cars that have been messed with before. So I'm going to have to find a bolt for that, put that back in there when I go to put this back together. Alright, so I got the intake loose. It's been 2 days since the last video, so I'm a little rusty on what I was doing before, but there's a whole bunch of bolts in it, and they are a pain in the ass to get to, but with a ratchet and extensions, you can get to them. They're 13 mil, bolts on the top, nuts on the bottom, studs on the bottom. As you can see, this is free this way, but not so much up and down. And there's not enough room back there to really get it off, but I'm thinking once I unbolt the head, I should be able to move the head off of the intake, which should make it fun to put it back together, but, you know. Anyways, you can see I took the throttle body off. I wasn't going to, but with the throttle cables and hoses and different things that are hooked to it, it's just easier to get it the hell out of the way. Leave everything hooked to it and just pull it out of the way. Plus it makes it easier for you to see all the top bolts when you're trying to get your ratchet on there, because that's really the hardest part, is seeing what you're doing because of the way that thing wraps around. Got to pull the EGR off the back of the head there. There's a bracket going to the oil fill. That's got to come off, and I got to unbolt this header. And then I think we can unbolt the head and take the head off. Yeah, there's so much crap on the top of this motor. So I just undid the flange bolts down there for the header. You can reach in through the fender well over here and kind of get at one of them pretty good. I was able to start to loosen the front one, and then from underneath the truck with a wobble extension, I was able to get on it with a socket and really twist it and get it off quick. Otherwise, you'll be there forever trying to reach through there with a wrench. But then I came up here and I took these head bolts out on the outside, and much to my surprise, they weren't tight. I think somebody forgot to torque sequence on this head when they put it back on, the guy that was in here before us, and that's probably why the head gasket failed. But we'll find out more when we get into it. Alright, so I got the head off here, and let me tell you, it is a pain to get that head out of there after you get it unbolted. There's two studs in the bottom that go through here, and you can't quite push the intake out of the way, so you kind of have to pop the head up and like wiggle it over to this side to get the intake off it, and then you got to tip it forward to get the EGR underneath this wiring, and you kind of got to pull it up and out. Oh, it's a pain. It's a royal pain. By yourself, yeah, you're gonna have to get up on your knees on here and pull it out. It's, yeah, not fun. It'd be easier if you had another guy with you. But as you can see, the cylinders don't look great. It looks like the gasket leaked between literally every cylinder. The inside head bolts were tight. We got a little rust in here, which isn't really good. The cylinders don't look great. That one there looks pretty bad, actually, but none of them look real good. The front one looks pretty good, but it's got 100,000 miles on it, 103,000. So, I mean, it's a 2.2. They're a dime a dozen, really. You can buy them on Craigslist for a couple $100, but here, let me show you the head. You can see that the water got in 1 and 2 here and completely washed the carbon off the top of it. Basically steam cleaned it, and then those two still got carbon on them. They're pretty shitty, but I don't know. I'm debating whether I take this head and have it crack checked or not. I probably should. It's like $75 at the local machine shop. I don't know how much money I really want to put in this motor. It's not in the greatest shape. I might just check it for flatness and put it back together. I gotta think about that. But it's out. It took a little while, and it wasn't fun, but it is out of there. Alright, so I got the head off the truck. I put a flat edge on it, and it's warped. It's probably warped like 20 thousandths in the center. The local machine shop for a crack check and a mill job, a deck job, is 175 bucks. Considering that you can probably buy a running motor for one of these trucks on Craigslist for 200 bucks, that doesn't really make sense. My father's a machinist though, so I'm going to have him mill it. I'm going to take the chance that there's not a crack in it and figure that it's just because it was warped that they had problems with it before. He's going to mill it, and I mean the cylinders don't really look that good, but I'm gonna wing it. I'm gonna try to put it back together and make it run. We're gonna put a gasket set in it, some new head bolts and stuff, and hope for the best on that. But hopefully, if you buy a truck, you buy one that runs, something a little bit nicer. Now, for you guys that don't live in the Rust Belt, you won't have to buy rust repair panels. So I split it up on the board here. Rust repair on that side, other stuff on this side. What I've got up here now is I got the 225, the original price for the truck. 125 was what I found 2-inch drop spindles for on eBay. 125 free shipping. 38.62 is what I found the 2-inch lowering blocks for the rear end on eBay for. Then on Craigslist there was a guy who had a set of 16x8 IROC Z wheels with almost new tires on them for 250 bucks. I didn't buy them because I have Monty SS wheels here, alloy wheels with tires on them already. But this was just to show you that you could buy a good set of wheels and tires for that price that'll fit on that truck and a bigger, wider wheel for it. So we're putting that up there as if I paid that for the Monty SS wheels. And $250 was what he was asking, or best offer. So you probably could have got them cheaper than that. But we'll leave it at $250 for our pricing. $100 is it's about what it's going to cost with the gasket set. Because you got to get a gasket set that has the head gasket, the intake gasket, the throttle body gasket, header gasket, EGR gasket. There's a whole bunch of gaskets. You can buy a kit that pretty much has everything you need for doing a head gasket job in it, as well as a set of head bolts. So the gasket kit's like 60-something bucks. The head bolts are 30 or 40 bucks or something like that. So you're looking at right around 100 bucks. The trick to that is to go on Google and look up Advanced Auto Parts coupons. Yes, Rock Auto has very good prices, but I usually manage to get the price down a little bit better with Advanced Auto Parts. Like I said, you go on Google, you look up Advanced Auto Parts coupons. A lot of times when you go to their website, it pops up with a code for discount. But you go get a coupon. Anyways, you use that code on the website. You pick your local store for pickup, and you'd buy it right online. It's cheaper than going to the store. So you buy it online, set it up for pickup, and then you go just pick the stuff up. And while you're there, get a My Perks card, and you can take even more off. You can use that online on top of the discount usually. So you'll actually get it down below 100. So I'll manage to get the gaskets and stuff below 100, but I put it up there for 100 right now because I haven't actually gone and bought the stuff yet. I wanted to see how bad that was, and it's pretty bad. But I'm going to try to scrub it by and make it work for a while for now. Hopefully, you, like I said, hopefully you bought a little bit nicer truck than I did. You don't live in the Rust Belt. Hopefully, you got a nice truck without rust. In a minute, when I'm done here, I'm gonna actually take the camera and I'm gonna show you guys who don't live in the Rust Belt what those of us up here have to deal with. So, anyways, I just talked about that. I will show you the actual eBay posting. I'll put it up when I'm done talking of the 2-inch drop spindles and the 2-inch drop blocks. So you can see that I'm not making this up. That's actually what they cost. Now, the spindles were not a name that I have used yet. I've used the McGaughy's and I've used the Beltec on other vehicles, and they worked fantastically. Is that even a word, fantastically? I don't know. Anyways, they worked great. Now, people say drop spring, drop spindle, back and forth. You know, everybody's got a different opinion on what they want to use. I like the spindle. It's easy to do. It doesn't mess up your geometry up front. Yes, it can affect your bump steer, but overall, you probably won't have to take your car and get the alignment done if you do a spindle. If you do a spring, it's going to change your camber, and you're going to have to go get your truck or car or whatever aligned, unless you're going for that stupid camber look. But that's opinion. they sell a lot of kits. When you go online and research, you're going to see a lot of kits that are 2-inch, 3-inch, or 3-inch, 4-inch, and that's because the truck from the factory kind of has a little bit of rake to it, and a 2-inch, 3-inch drop will bring it to a more level sitting stance. I don't like that personally. I kind of like the truck to have a little bit of rake, a little muscle car look to it, so I couldn't find a good 2-in-2 kit, so I got them separate. I got the 2-inch spindles, and then I got the 2-inch blocks. It was actually cheaper that way. And the block kit that I got was an aluminum kit, not a steel kit. I don't think it really matters. It'd be a little bit lighter. But this kit actually is angle cut to account for the pinion angle when you lower the rear end, because it's going to change your pinion angle, and if you don't do it right, you'll get a lot of wheel hop when the back tires spin. So hopefully the kit I got, they said they accounted for it. Hopefully they did. I guess we'll find out at some point here. But anyways, and then like I said, the rims and tires, I already have those Monte Carlo wheels, so we're not going to worry about that in the gasket set. So now let's talk about rust repair. I separated it off to the side here because guys who buy a nicer vehicle, or guys that don't live in the Rust Belt, guys or girls, sorry I leave you guys out there, they're not going to have to deal with this. So this is going to be like a separate price side for those of us up here in the crappy salt Rust Belt. The patch panels for the rockers and cab corners, I will find that on eBay. I found it once before. I want to say it was like $85.25 free shipping, something like that. I'll find it and I'll post it. And then bedsides. Okay, my bedsides are, the wheel well is completely rotted out. I'm going to show you when we're done here. But the patch panels, actually the cheapest place I found them was on Summit. They were like $38.60 a piece for each patch panel. So with taxes and everything, you're looking at over $80. And then the time to cut them out and weld them in, which is totally possible. I could have done that. But I don't have a whole bunch of time because I got 2 kids and other projects going on. So I went on Craigslist and I managed to find a bed, a whole bed, that still had the wheel wells in it. They were in way better shape than mine. They got a couple little spots I got to patch, but a whole bed for $150. So I went and picked that up. $150. I got the whole bed. The wheel wells are in it. I don't got to cut anything out. It's a little bit more money, and then I can take my old bed to the scrapyard and make a little bit of money back. So it'll actually probably come close to breaking even on that, where it would have been $80, 80-something bucks with tax on Summit. It's probably going to end up costing me about $80 to just bolt a bed on the truck and not have to cut and weld a bunch of stuff. So you got to check Craigslist and eBay and these places. You got to look around and shop around to find your parts for cheap. And like I said, the Advanced Auto Parts coupons and whatnot is a good way to go for cheap parts too. Other than cab corners and rockers and the bed sides, I got a couple little spots I got to fix in the front, but I can just cut some sheet metal and stuff, out of the sheet of metal that I have here. That being said, I have metal laying around. You probably don't. When it comes to doing sheet metal work, the cheap welders that they sell at Harbor Freight will do sheet metal work. I mean, you don't need a big welder like, a 220 welder or something like I got. You don't need that stuff for sheet metal. You could get away with that cheap welder from Harbor Freight. It'll do it. Flux cores, that stuff will work fine for doing sheet metal. As far as getting sheet metal is concerned, go out the night before garbage day, like the scrap guys do, drive around and find somebody who's throwing stuff out. An old washer and dryer or any of that stuff, any piece of equipment that's got metal on it. You could cut pieces off of that, technically speaking, and use that for sheet metal repair. Just if you wanted to be cheap and not go to the metal place and buy a sheet of metal. I go and buy a sheet of metal, but if you wanted to be cheap and try to do a budget, you could go, like I just said, and drive around or find somebody who's throwing something away, an old file cabinet or something, and you could cut a piece of metal out of the side of it and use that to patch with. Another thing, if you don't have a welder, a lot of cars today are actually glued together, not welded. The chemical process of bonding agents has come really far. On Outsider, on the Camaro, I actually used body adhesive to glue the cowl onto the steel hood. It was a fiberglass cowl glued to a steel hood. Amazing. It's a 2-part, like epoxy. I glued it on there. I actually stood on the back of the hood and pulled up on it as hard as I could, and it was not letting go. If you're creative enough, you could probably get away with some body adhesive and some filler and do a lot of the patchwork that you're going to see me do in the future on the truck. And I'll probably talk about it more when I go to do that. You could, if you're creative enough, you could get away with that and not even buy a welder. But we'll talk about that more when I get to it. Enough with this right now. We'll come back to it when we actually get to it. I did order the lowering kit stuff. I still got to get a gasket. But let me show you the rust that I was talking about. Alright, so here's the race car. In order for me to get everything in my shop, I have to lift the Sonoma up in the air on the lift and push the race car in under it because my shop's not big enough. Anyways, let's talk about rust. For those of you that don't live in the Rust Belt, this is what we deal with. That's what I was talking about, the wheel well and the rear quarter panel. It's pretty much gone. There's your cab corner and what's left of a rocker. If you look under there, there's the frame. It looks pretty grody. You see the drive shaft and stuff under there. Everything's pretty rusty and nasty, and that's what we have to deal with up here in New York in the Rust Belt. It makes everything kind of hard to work on. The frame is solid. I know it looks horrible, but most of this is just the paint and a little bit of scale and stuff coming off. You see they got a little machinist wire there holding the exhaust on. It's just pretty sweet. Somebody's already gone through and ran a bunch of new brake lines to the back because that's typical up here. The brake lines rot out. See somebody pieced in a fuel line here. This piece is still pretty crappy, but the front of these are plastic. That's typical. It's typical what we deal with here. Actually, if you come up here, there's actually a hole in the floor. That's carpet. I'm going to have to patch that at some point so my feet don't get wet. But, I mean, look at this. The front brake rotor. Because this wouldn't normally look like this if you were driving it every day, but this truck sat for over 6 months, and that's what happened in just the 6 months of it sitting outside. And this rotor is really not. I mean, I've seen them way worse than this. But I mean, look at that's your dust shield. It's holding the hose on back there, but the shield's completely rotted off. I'm gonna have to take that all apart and get that out of the way. I'll just take the dust shield off because it's not necessary. It's kind of just a. I mean, look at that. This is New York. That's what you deal with. Here's this side's rocker. Pretty rough. And the cab corner's completely gone. And that rear quarter panel is even worse than the other side. It's completely gone. So, now you see why I paid $150 for it bad. This fender's in better shape than the other side is. It's actually still there. Where this one's kind of gone. But I'll bend a piece up and weld it in there. You won't even be able to tell. Look at that. Awesome New York rust. Gotta love that. Looks like there's a mouse nest or something in there too. Maybe it's just dirt and debris. That's the Rust Belt. That's the stuff that most of you probably don't have to deal with. Everything I work on, pretty much you have to deal with that. This fender's in really good shape up top. It's just mostly down here. Like I said. We'll get it fixed up. Rust. That was the nice part about the head gasket job is they had already been in there, so most of the bolts and stuff came out fairly easily. I didn't have to fight anything. But yeah, there you go. That's when I say Rust Belt, that's what I'm talking about. You know, New York, parts of Ohio, they use salt on the roads and it eats the vehicles. And believe it or not, this truck is actually in better shape than most of the trucks this age. So anyways, until next time, keep it creative and happy building.